I call the meeting to order. Approval of the draft agenda as was circulated has been moved, seconded. All in favor, opposed, motion carried. Now we have two sets of minutes, January 31st, 2022 and February 22nd, 2022. Meetings of this committee minutes. Kate, you have some comments before we
Yes,
deal with?
yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, members. I wanted to draw members' attention to a revision to our usual practice of circulating draft minutes of the committee. So pursuant to the governance framework, which was adopted by the committee 2 months ago now, we are circulating copies of the draft in-camera minutes directly to members' private email accounts for their review. You'll see in the presentation materials for this afternoon's meeting that the public portion of the minutes are reflected there for your consideration and your approval in the black text, and then the in-camera portion is also included in the red text. I just wanted to draw your attention to the two elements of those draft minutes, and you can certainly approve them together by way of a motion today. If there are any changes to either, I'd be happy to take your direction. If you have any substantive points of discussion, of course, on any element of the in-camera minutes, would be ideal to discuss that in the in-camera portion of the meeting later today.
Okay. Why don't we deal?
Oh, okay. I can bring so there are two sets.
Thanks.
Okay. So as members will see that we have two sets of minutes, which are both prepared in that style, as I've described. So one from January 31st and one from February the 22nd.
Okay, let's first deal with January 31st meeting minutes. So may I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 31st as circulated? Moved, seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, let's then deal with minutes of February 22nd meeting. May I have a motion again, please? It's been moved, seconded. All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. So item number 3 is update from the clerk. Kate.
Great. Thank you again, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, members. I have a few items to note this afternoon. I would note that as compared to the February 22nd meeting, which was fairly hastily organized, I did want to extend a welcome to the two new members from the official opposition, Todd Stone and Corley Oakes, and also to advise members that pursuant to the commitments within our governance framework that we have offered an orientation training session to both new members of the committee. So we certainly welcome them to the committee. I have a number of other items that I'd like to note as well. One with respect to the Vancouver-Colchana constituency office. Following the resignation of Mr. Wilkinson in February, and with the Speaker's support, the Legislative Assembly has moved to cover the monthly lease costs for the existing Vancouver-Colchana constituency office through to the election of a new member following the anticipated by-election. The landlord was supportive of us continuing the lease with the same termination clause applying if the newly elected member did not wish to continue the space, but given the limited availability of office space in the Lower Mainland and the economical rent in a good location, I was very pleased that we'd be able to take those interim steps, which I think will benefit the new member as well in due course. I'll also mention to members that we are, the administration is working towards the completion of our first strategic plan, which will be launching next month, which will outline, as members know, the purpose, principles, strategic goals, and priorities for the year ahead. Each department of the Assembly administration is currently working on their own operating plans to help us support a successful execution of the overall strategic plan for the organization. And so in the months ahead, we'll be working with an eye on the strategic plan, building organizational capacity and undertaking initiatives that better position our teams to deliver on our core purpose, providing the services and infrastructure vital to this democratic institution. We'll also be investing in modern, secure, and sustainable infrastructure, both in our physical space here on the precinct as well as in our IT and digital infrastructure. And we'll continue our commitment to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, focusing on employee engagement and learning and development opportunities. Along with Speaker Chohan, I'm also working to prepare a first reconciliation action plan for the Legislative Assembly, which will also be incorporated into our strategic plan in the year ahead. So all of these efforts, we hope, will ultimately contribute to the good services and support for you members and the institution that we're also proud to serve. And I look forward to sharing a more detailed planning update with you at my next opportunity. I also wanted to just take a moment to speak about some changes in our Human Resources Department. Although our new interim Chief Human Resources Officer, Manjeet Bains, is not able to attend the meeting this afternoon, I did want to express my appreciation to her on the record for the strong leadership that she has undertaken since taking on that position in January earlier this year. She's been very focused on strengthening organizational capacity within the Human Resources team, including stabilizing that team through a period of leadership transition, and also helping us ensure that the strategic priorities that we've set for the year ahead are well positioned. Those include co-leading a corporate services information system strategy, which we referred to previously as an ERP project, Enterprise Resource ERP, the acronym ERP, which is a business transformation project, which helps us integrate information services across various departments in the administration. Pardon me?
He stands for team.
ERP, an Enterprise
team.
Resource Planning. So an integrated system to help us plan and support systems in all of the administrative departments. So Andrew Spence and Manjeet Bains are working together quite closely to identify the needs, particularly in our payroll and HR services area. And so we will be bringing forward some updates on that significant project to keep the committee informed of the work that's underway to modernize those systems and to ensure very critical for our business continuity objectives, as well as supporting effective decision-making in the organization. Manjeet is also working with me to finalize the development of a diversity, equity, inclusivity, and accessibility strategy in the months ahead. It's an important part of our strategic plan and also the mandate letter that I was provided by this committee and with the Speaker. So we will be looking forward to working together and bringing forward more updates on that piece. And then finally, we're still working to complete the implementation of the compensation review that was undertaken of Legislative Assembly positions over the past year. So Manjeet is working to finalize the framework and completion of the strategy to ensure an inclusive and supportive work environment that attracts, retains, and develops employees in our environment. So I know Manjeet very much wanted to come today to have an opportunity to brief you on some of the initiatives in her areas, and so I've invited her to do so at the next opportunity, at the next time that the committee will reconvene.
Thank you, Kate. Any discussions, questions? Thank you. I guess they need. So this committee will be in recess for about 10 minutes. to order. So we are now on item number 4 on the agenda, capital budget request, fire alarm upgrade project. Kate, Hillary,
This is a Hillary item. I think this one.
Hillary.
Speaker. There is a decision note before the committee today where we are seeking approval to proceed with the fire alarm upgrade project as a capital project. And that's for both the current fiscal year, so 2021-22, and next fiscal year, 2022-23. By way of background, the fire alarm upgrade project is a multi-year project. It's been ongoing for several years, and it's under the responsibility of the Legislative Facility Services Department. Up until the current year, the project costs have been treated as an operating expense, and as the cost of the individual components did not meet the capital asset threshold. With the project now moving into heritage office spaces, we had to change the component design. They're more expensive. They've now triggered on the asset threshold for capitalization. So as a result, all future costs for this project now need to be treated as a capital expense. So in accordance with our Policy 3030, Capital Project Review and Approval, any capital projects arising after the annual Vote 1 budget is approved must receive pre-approval in order to proceed. That pre-approval is, and the level of expense authority is dependent on the value of the project. So in this case, the project for both 2021-22 and the next fiscal as well is over $100,000, which is the approval threshold for this committee. So the request before the committee today is to consider approval of, 1, the project approval form for fiscal 2021-22 this year in the amount of $130,000, and also the project approval form for 2022-23 in the amount of $150,000. Consideration and approval by this committee of the 2 project approval forms, which are attached to the decision note, will enable the payment of vendors in the current year for work that they have performed, and also to allow for the project to proceed on an accelerated schedule and ensure the timely completion of both phases 1 and 2 in fiscal 22-23. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the request.
Your
Capital definitely needs to be done.
group?
Yeah, so I do support the moving forward to capital, but is there a policy like we have when a project move from operating to capital?
Yeah, so we have 2 policies. We have the accounting for tangible capital assets, which determines a capital project. And in this particular case, because the project it's based on a threshold, so we have accounting policies, but as soon as the accounting determination is made, we have to make that consideration and that change. In this case, because it's a mid-year cycle approval, we need to come back to this committee. But we do have it, and it's consistent with public sector accounting standards.
Okay, any further questions? Sonia?
I raised it at Finance and Audit, but just putting it back on the record that I don't think the alarm is working in our lower office.
Okay.
So
great.
if that
Thank
could be
you.
followed up on.
We'll follow up.
Okay, if no further questions, we have to approve the capital budget request as presented. Has been moved, seconded, all in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Number 5 on the agenda, respectful workplace policy, external investigators. Kate?
Great, yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So members have received a decision note with an expanded listing of external investigators to be retained in the event that they are required to conduct or assist with an investigation pursuant to the Respectful Workplace Policy, which was adopted by the Legislative Assembly Management Committee some time ago in 2021. So at the time of its adoption, members may recall there were only 3 external investigator firms that had been identified to be available to the Assembly should their services be required. At the request of the committee, we have undertaken a very thorough review of the range of expertise and knowledge that would be required to support individuals with respect to any investigations resulting from a complaint or allegation of disrespectful conduct, which may include elements of discrimination or harassment on any protected ground. So the list of external investigators, which is brought forward today on page 2 of the briefing note, is much expanded list and is representative of a number of firms and individuals with significant expertise and recognition in this area of practice. So the request being brought forward to you for consideration today is a motion to amend the list of external investigators as previously presented. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Gary?
What's the criterion that's used to select from the list? Do you understand what I mean? We have 8 that are approved. How do we decide? Is it a rotational basis or?
Yeah, I think much will also turn on the availability of, we want to ensure that the investigation proceeds in a timely way. So based on the circumstances that may be evident, there is some areas of practice here with other areas of expertise which may come into play. As you might remember as well, Gary, that it comes very late in the process. There are many efforts made up until this point to resolve a concern through an informal process, mediation. But should it come to this point, I believe that the policy provides for guidance with respect to how the investigators would be determined, and because we have a range now, we can ensure that it's agreeable to all parties.
So I have a question, Kate. Would the employee who is concerned about this, who may have a complaint, would they have a say in selecting who would be the investigator?
I believe that is a consideration of policy, but I don't have it in front of me, so I'd be happy to circle back to members after the meeting to confirm the process of selection, just to ensure that I don't misspeak at this point.
That's fine. Gary?
So my concern is that there may be the perception of bias if there's not a rotational system or some system by which we can justify, because it works the other way as well. I suppose allegations could be made that because of our prior contact that we selected this firm rather than another firm, whatever. It's just, we have to remove any perception of bias. And there, I think, has to be a process that we can refer to, which would accommodate the speaker's concern as well.
Anybody else? Your group?
I'm just curious to understand, like, I understand we have selected the people, subsequently we will have some sort of agreement with the firm. And like, how do you bring consistency, about the outcomes? Because these are different people, different skill set completely, like outcomes of dealing with similar cases.
So you're saying basically that at one point we have used firm A and they delivered their decision based on this evidence and circumstances, and then next issue comes up, we go to firm B on a rotational basis, but firm A already has the expertise in dealing with that kind of thing. You're saying we should also consider using the previous firm as well rather than going on rotation?
No, I'm saying, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying how do you ensure the same outcome or a similar outcome based on similar circumstances?
Circumstances. Okay.
I would say in that case, we would be dependent on the provisions of the policy and the fair administration by the independent respectful workplace office. That is an active role that they would play, and just in reviewing the provisions of the policy, it is ultimately the decision of the independent respectful workplace policy, but they can entertain requests by the complainant or the respondent with respect to the selection from the list. But ultimately, that is within their mandate to ensure an equitable and effective process.
So is there a prescribed rate of pay that is equal for all of them, or are some more expensive than others?
I think it would be a range, but all of them being established firms. I'm sure that there's some consistency there, but I don't have the rates available to share with the committee this afternoon, Gary. But I'm anticipating that there would be some variation firm to firm.
But shouldn't we set the rate?
From my past experience, in my previous life, I have done these kind of things before. Yes, we would deal with that company in advance, that we lay out our expectations and what kind of complaint there could be. It's a hypothetical at that stage, and we ask them what kind of rate of their services would be, and then we also tell them the range of our expectation that we can only go up to this point or that point. So you negotiate that with them. But here, some are very established big firms. I don't know what their policy is going to be.
And it may also be a reflection of the complexity of various investigations and how many professionals may be involved in assisting. There could be various individuals, let's say, who could be, for example, interviewed to provide evidence with respect to one element of the complaint or another. So I think that there would be definitely a range of costs associated based on the amount of time that would be required to assist the Assembly with these matters.
I guess, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm concerned about the rate. Obviously, it can be a different rate. In the RCMP, we would provide legal counsel to members charged with offenses, but there was a ceiling rate just because it can get very expensive. So the provision of legal services may be a obligation and duty of the employer, but we don't want to build a cottage industry on the backs of the government, and that happens, right? I don't know how I guess we can put a fence around it, in the sense that we can set the rate is not to exceed a specific amount per hour or whatever their billing process is.
Why don't we just find out what in general, what they get a sense of where they charge, and then we can
Yes,
have a
we'd be
further
happy
discussion.
to provide the committee with a general sense of the range of the hourly rate. I know that the committee has approved, as part of the Vote 1 budget estimates for the Legislative Assembly for the year ahead, a budget for the office, the independent office, and incorporated within that estimate would include funds that may be required should an investigation arise. But the rate of the professional rate charged by each firm, be happy to provide that information as a follow-up item to members.
Sonia?
Just think, for some context around the policy, it's largely meant to be preventative, a proactive approach to having the policy. And as I understand, we are going to get sort of a yearly report on data. Is that correct? Yes, I see the
Yes.
clerk nodding her head. So we'd be able to have a sense every year of how many cases would actually go this far. I expect it would, hopefully, given the intention of the policy, be zero to few. But it'll be really helpful to have that data as part of our assessment every year of how the policy and the office are working.
I would also mention, if I might, that the working group who has assisted us with the development and review of the policy to date, which is comprised of members of this committee, Michelle Babchuk, and Sonia Furstenau, of course, and then previously it was Peter Millibar, and I believe Mr. Stone is a member of that working group currently. We have an opportunity to bring to that working group a new contract to retain a new firm to assist us with the administration of the independent, respectful workplace policy. And if there are any other refinements that members would like us to bring to the working group for consideration, be happy to do so relatively soon. We've just completed preparation of the request for proposals, and I anticipate that it would be ready for the consideration of the working group very soon. I'll also mention as well that we have reached out to other employee groups at the Legislative Assembly as requested by the committee at the time that the policy was formally approved. And so we have recently had the opportunity through the Office of the Premier and with the support of the Chief of Staff, Mr. Meggs, to ensure that the policy also applies to political staff in ministerial offices and the Office of the Premier. So that addition will be an expanded component with respect to application of the policy, and it will be included in the appendix to the policy with the next update.
Any further questions or comments? All right, then. So may I have the motion that pursuant to section 4.03 of the Respectful Workplace Policy, the amended list of external investigators be adopted as presented? Has been moved, seconded, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Now we have item number 6, is the 2021-22 quarter 3 financial update. Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the report before you today includes the financial projections for the period ended December 31st, 2021. It consists of 9 months of actual results and 3 months of projections. So as of December 31st, 2021, the total operating expenses were projected to be underspent by $2 million against a total budget of $86.1 million. In addition, total capital expenses were projected to be underspent by $2.4 million against a budget of $6.3 million. So if I'll start by focusing on the operational costs, if you go to the bottom of page 1, the variances are broken down into 3 main areas. The first being member services, which is forecasting a $1.2 million underspend. The main variance relates to savings and benefits and lower transitional assistance payments to former members following the October 2020 election. The second category is caucus support services. So as at December 31st, 2021, all caucuses were forecasting to be fully spent and to spend the full approved budget combined of $8.2 million. The final category is administrative support services, which is forecasting an $861,000 underspend, mainly as a result of staff vacancies, unused contingencies, and savings in operational expenses. So if we have the committee to turn to page 2 of the report. The departments projected to be over budget as at quarter 3 are highlighted. Amber color, or the yellow, is if they are over budget by less than 5%, and red if by more than 5% over budget. So the detailed explanations of each of the variances by department are covered on pages 3 and 4 of the report. In terms of the projected overspends, the 3 departments of note are 1, the Office of the Clerk, which is projecting to be over budget by approximately $90,000. That is a result of the new legal counsel position, which was approved mid-year by this committee, and a greater than anticipated legal costs. The other area, Information Technology Department, it's projected to be over budget by $1.7 million. That's a result of unbudgeted costs related to professional services. You will, however, note that contingencies, which are held in the general centralized expense budget, have been set aside to partially offset this overage. So we have 1 under, 1 over. In addition, Hansard Services is projected to be over budget by $241,000 as a result of higher salaries and benefits due to increased committee activity throughout the fiscal year. I'll turn now to page 5 of the report. And this is on the capital expenditures. So again, as of December 31st, 2021, There is a projected underspend of $2.4 million on the budget of $6.3 million. Now, the main contributor to this underspend is within the Capital Planning and Development Department, and it's primarily related to project delays from a number of reasons. We have a staff vacancy that's resulting from recruitment challenges. There's contractor availability to support the major project work that is being undertaken, and also we have supply chain issues which have resulted in delayed project timelines. The impact of this can also be seen on the operating expense, where there's also a projected underspend for this department. Now, given that we're at March 30th, we have fiscal year end, which is currently upon us, and we have the continued challenges at the macro level regarding logistical supply chain issues. We have recruitment challenges. As a result, we are continuing to see a rising trend in the projected underspend for the Legislative Assembly. That information will be provided at our Q4 report, which will be our actual results for the year. And in addition to the report that you're seeing here today, we will be providing a more detailed analysis of the end results. So I'd be pleased to answer any questions that any members might have on this Q3 report.
Jagarup?
Thank you for this. 38% variance on the capital expenses is huge.
Yes.
I see the description, here as to why it happened, but, I mean, this is huge. Is there anything we can do to improve it in the future?
Yes. So one of the things that we have undertaken as part of the budget for Vote 1 for next year that was approved by this committee in December is for the capital planning, we've really scaled back in terms of the projects. So for those that were on the committee at that time, we've restricted it to the projects that we've started to complete those, so no additional projects coming forward. We've also revised the timelines in terms of completion on those. So we expect to be delivering on what we anticipated to and put forward in the budget for next year.
Todd?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So just for absolute clarity, following up on Jagroup's question, you're not anticipating just moving of the underspend from this fiscal to the following fiscal, but rather you've adjusted the projects that you're anticipating or planning for the next fiscal. That will be less than maybe otherwise.
Yes, I really appreciate that question. That is exactly what we have done. So there's not an anticipation that this underspend will be on top of what we've approved for the budget. We've actually done a recast of those projects to determine at what stage and to what we can actually deliver for next fiscal.
Any projects that when you're scaling back the scope of some of these projects or eliminating projects entirely, are there any that are of concern to the department that because you're not doing them or you're reducing the scope that maybe presents some risk in some sense?
Yes, what will come back to this committee is we're actually looking, even from the budget that we presented in December, is a reallocation in terms of some of those projects. So for one of them from the budget you will have seen was for the fire escape project to proceed. And what we're seeing in terms of the construction estimates we've received, the costs are increasing significantly, particularly in regards to glass, which is one of the pieces that we have to do replacement for safety glass in that project. So we will be bringing forward to the Subcommittee on Finance and Audit and then up to this committee a fuller breakdown of those projects coming up for next year.
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any detailed questions.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No? Okay. And the financial update will be posted on the Legislative Assembly website.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Item number 7, 2021-22 Q3 Policy Non-Compliance and Exception Report. Kate and Hillary, both of you.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you again. So members will have received in your meeting material package a report of policy non-compliance and exceptions that were made during the third quarter of the fiscal year. So as you can see, the report covers a number of instances of policy noncompliance, which we disclose to you with in acknowledgement of your important oversight role with respect to the operations of the administration and as required by our Legislative Assembly policy framework. So with respect to instances of non-compliance, there are a number described in this quarter's report. 2 instances of non-compliance with respect to the corporate purchasing card use, 1 with respect to capital project review and approval policy, and 44 instances of non-compliance with the vacation policy, particularly with respect to the 2021 vacation leave period. On that topic, I will note that work to review the requirements of the vacation policy are underway now. There was a significant change in the posture of the organization with respect to carryover of unused vacation time, and instead of requiring members or employees rather to use a minimum number of vacation hours on an annual basis, we're looking towards limiting the maximum amount of carryover that is permitted under the policy. So reversing at the outset the requirements of this policy with a view to, of course, always prioritizing the importance of employees taking well-earned vacation time at the Assembly. But this unusually high instance of non-compliance, I think, reflects the approach taken in the previous policy, which requires the minimum of 3 weeks policy to be used by employees. And so again, just for clarity, that the employees I anticipate under the new policy will be able to carry over, but we will be capping the maximum amount of carryover on a year-to-year basis, which should address the compliance concerns. That's right. That's the simple approach. The Minister is quite correct. I'm bringing forward to your attention 3 instances of policy exceptions that I authorized as clerk, which are outlined in the second half of the report. So an exception to our vacation policy with respect to a long-serving employee who is retiring this year to enable them to use it as pre-retirement leave, an exception to the overtime policy to allow an individual seeking an extended break in support of mental wellness to take some compensatory time off, overtime hours with the anticipated leave. And then finally, under the recruitment and selection policy, an exception made by me with respect to a relocation allowance that was provided to an employee who left the organization with a balance owing on that relocation amount at the time of departure. I decided to waive the obligation with respect to the personal circumstances affecting the employee's resignation at that time. If members have any questions about the public report or would like to discuss any of these instances in greater detail during the in-camera session, I'd be happy to have that happen.
Any question, comment? Nope. Thank you. Hillary, you want to say anything? No? Okay.
I think that appropriately covered it. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. And then we have item number 8, 2022-23 Policy Development Work Plan. Kate.
Great, thank you again. I'll note on this agenda item, which is typically led by Artur, he's on table duty at the moment, so I will be walking the committee through our policy development work plan for the year ahead, which is deposited with your committee annually pursuant to our policy framework. So I wanted to acknowledge that we continue to work through undertake an incredible amount of work with respect to policy renewal at the Legislative Assembly, and that work was well underway in the fiscal year that is just about to conclude. And I wanted to acknowledge both Artur and my colleague Scott Clare, Senior Policy Project Analysts, all of the members of the policy committee and the many subject matter experts within the administration departments who contributed to the good progress over this current year now concluding. We do recognize that there's a lot of work that remains as we seek to continue to modernize our policy landscape, and this includes policies applicable to members that will be considered by your committee in due course, as well as policies that apply to employees within the administration. We are very grateful to the committee's support in the budget request for 2022, 2023. With your support, we will be able to have a new policy analyst, FTE. It's our first one at the Legislative Assembly, so we're looking forward to the recruitment of that individual. This work plan is brought forward this afternoon as an information item. We'd be grateful for any input or feedback from members at this point or in the future, particularly where we may have policy gaps or areas where you feel that we should strengthen policy to ensure that we provide certainty and clarity across the board.
Just a quick question in terms of, there's quite an extensive list. Is there any thought to prioritizing and having us have a look at any that we may think need to be a priority in terms of resources being devoted to them?
Oh, from a member's perspective?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah, absolutely. It's very much welcome that conversation, Minister. And I'll just emphasize that there are some policies that will affect members in particular. I believe they're with respect to a number of IT-related policies. And the approval authority, of course, will be this committee, so we will be bringing those forward to the Subcommittee on Administration Operations. I believe consultation with caucuses have already taken place, but just to ensure members are aware that the final decision and approval will rest with you. But if you have any suggestions with respect to prioritization, be very appreciative of that feedback. Thanks.
Any further discussion or comments? Todd?
Is this an appropriate time to just ask for a clarification on a couple of the items that are on the list?
Yes, we will do our best to
Yeah,
try and
so
answer.
just the two that so on the first page, the prepaid expenses. Can you elaborate? It's the second from the bottom on the first page.
Right, yeah, so
What does that actually contemplate?
So the department it's a financial services policy. So Hillary, I note that it's a revision, and do you have an update on where that's at, or what the objective of?
Yeah, I might have to get back to you on that, but it isn't a new policy. It is a revision, but I'm happy to share.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could.
Yeah, thank you.
And then on the last page on the back, the fourth from the bottom, constituency office expenditures, formalizing a process for spending of public monies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What is contemplated there? But this is one that hasn't started yet.
Right. I think that part of the intent with this would be to bring forward in a clear format a policy that better addresses all of the components of the policy as it's currently in essence, a narrative on a website. The Members' Policy Guide to Policy and Resources website is our authoritative policy source, and we had brought forward in the last few months a proposal to better strengthen and provide more clarity to frameworks such as that that govern the expenditure in constituency offices. So it's not necessarily going to substantially change the outcomes of what, let's say, an eligible expense would be, but it's the formatting of that policy and ensuring that there's clarity. And I believe as well that there are a number of questions that have been identified that we would be resolving with respect to the objectives of what that revision would cover. We can certainly provide members a more active update on any policy revisions that are planned that affect members in particular, if there's an interest at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going with it. Let's head off what could otherwise be some potential tension.
Yes.
By making sure that we're able to go back to our respective caucuses and with a bit of a heads up that there's some work being done on policy that may have some impact.
Absolutely. If there are any substantial changes, I think it'd be very helpful to ensure that we clearly understand what the objective is before that work begins, and so to receive support from the committee with respect to the framework that we would undertake if any substantive changes are contemplated.
And to better understand the constituency office needs and all that, clerk's office has started reaching out to some constituency offices to get their questions and concerns too, so they will better understand to make sure that goes into the policy, those issues are addressed. Yeah. Anybody else? No? Oh, sorry, Corley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, whether this would be the appropriate time to talk about the review or development of a policy for members who, for example, may be undergoing different medical treatments, such as chemo radiation, just the policy on how we are going to address travel compensation. I know that we've had that problem in our caucus, and as opposed to doing one-off, have we considered how we're going to actually form a policy, and would this be the time to discuss it or at a later date?
Actually, we've already initiated that, but Hillary, you can speak to it? Great. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. So we actually have received that feedback and that information, so we're in the process of developing a proposal, and it will come forward to the Subcommittee on Administration and Operations for consideration and any feedback from members on that group, and then it will proceed to this committee level. But it is top of mind, and I think I have a March 31st deadline for that, so that's tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Then that concludes those items. Now, may I have a motion to proceed in camera to consider some personal matters? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Motion carried.